everyone, it's Gay Girl here. I don't know if you guys like watching documentaries. I do. I like watching documentaries about pretty much everything, mostly thrillers and also psychological stuff. So I was watching, was recommended to me by friends about the curious case of certain people in crime. Because everybody, come on now, let's be real. We like watching crime and punishment, and you see it all day long, And so the thing about working at the farm is that I get guys that have been in prison, been in rehab, and they just need a second chance. And they don't need to be labeled. Because I was watching a documentary about a guy named Paris Bennett, and he had murdered his little sister, God rest her soul. And I don't condone what he did. I think that it was horrible. And I think that he did that at 13. They say you don't become a man or a woman until you're a certain age. So I felt sorry for him because he's in prison for the rest of his entire life because he's labeled as a psychopath. And it was on the Morgan show, I guess that, what's his name? Anyways, you probably know it. He's on CNN. But anyways, he did a whole take. I think it was an hour long. And then there's other documents of kids killing kids. They have that series on Lifetime. And it's sad to me because you get guys in the military that go to these wars, and they don't come back and tell you about who they killed. They killed multiple people. And then they say that these kids planned the murders, like that one girl who killed her neighbor and said she just wanted to know what death was like. And she's in prison for a long time. And I'm grateful. But the problem is, they're not being rehabilitated to know what they did wrong. Because they're kids. But when you get guys in the military at 17, like my dad, my dad in 1960s, and my uncle too, they were drafted, and they had killed people in the Vietnam War, and we don't come and label our military men as psychopath, and it's hard for them to be rehabilitated, and some of them are homeless, and I think it's extremely sad to me that we don't have a way of counseling. Because a sin is a sin, and I know that sounds horrible to some people, like, Tom, what are you saying? What kind of crap are you watching? But in reality, we've all committed some kind of crime. And when I think about second chances, I think that a lot of people need that. And what they did was wrong. When Piers Morgan, that's the guy's name, when he was talking about the Paris Bennett curious case of him, he wanted to show like a 9/11 911 call that he made, and so the criminal was like, no, I don't want to hear it because I don't want to relive what I did. People that are crazy, they want to hear it. They want to basically put themselves in the same submerge of their horrible crime. But this guy, he did this at 13. So he's labeled as psychopath. And half of them are labeled as psychopath at a very young age. And I pray for these kids in prison. The ones that were 6 years old, like the one who shot his elementary, classmate, right? So, and it was a documentary about guns and control of guns, whatever. But it still doesn't help the psychological point of most people. And I think that we in America, we need to change the rules around and find a way to help everybody that has committed an awful crime, because can they be rehabilitated? We say no, just sit them in jail. Well, it's not fair, because there are people that did less crime in jail, and yet they get out and they do horrible crime because the prisons don't rehabilitate. They don't help the individual to get better in life. And we have to all struggle with that. And there's churches that they look beyond their crime and they have compassion. And I can tell you there are amazing stories of people that have been survivors of crime, and they still forgive their person that hurt them. And they still forgive. And I don't know how they do it, but thank God there are people like that, because I don't think we could live in a world without forgiveness. So, on to the next.